Okay. So SPS class, what we have seen, the generic extraction, right? So we'll just quickly walk through the steps what we have performed, and then we'll go to the enhancements. For generic extraction, what is generic extraction? Generic extraction is the extraction which is used to create your own extractor, which is used to create your own data source if your business content doesn't satisfy. Business content extractors, okay, business content extractors or SAP delivered extractors doesn't satisfy with respect to the business requirement. With respect to the business requirement, if you don't have any standard data source which covers your business requirement, then we can go ahead and create our own extractor. Okay. So for that, what are the steps? Log on to SAP ECC system. The T code to create the generic data source is RS02. RS02. Okay. We can create the generic data source for transaction data, master data attribute, and master data text. We cannot create generic data source for hierarchies. Okay. Then once you select your type of data source and give some name, continue, and then it will ask you to save it under your some application. Then it will ask you to save it under some application component, because we are creating a data source. If you want to search, where we'll go and search, it should be saved under some folder. The folder in this case nothing but your application component, SD, MM, PP, HR, based on your type of the data source that you are going to create. Okay. Then provide your descriptions. Okay, provide your descriptions. Then we can create generic data source by using table or view, info set query, or function module. We can create generic data source by using table or view, info set query, or function module. Okay, so based on our requirement, we can use that one and save it. Okay, once you save it, it will take us to the maintain data source screen. Means what all the fields we have in the table or view. Okay, for those fields we have 4 options. The same thing: selection, hide, inversion, and fields only. You know what are those, right? And based on the requirement, we select those options and save it. Okay, then if you want to set up the delta, or if you want to enable the delta mode for the particular data source, for generic data source, okay, always it will be a full load. If you're not setting that, always you have to load the full load. Assume that you have a generic data source need to be loaded as a delta as well. If you want to load the delta load for the particular data source, then what you have to do, we have to enable the delta mode. We have to enable the delta mode. How do you do that? Okay, once you go to RS02, say give your name and save it, right? Then where we give the type of data source, the source is info set query, function module, or table or view. There you have an option called generic delta. Generic delta. If you click on that, a page will open where you will have the delta can be enabled based on timestamp, cal day, or numeric pointer. Timestamp means based on your time and date. Based on your time and date. Cal day means based on only on your date. Numeric pointer based on your record number. I have a sales document number. So sales document number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It will automatically generate in the backend. Okay, when you are creating a sales order, it will generate automatically. The numbers will be created automatically. Document numbers. So those numbers will be an unique. Those numbers will be an unique. So based on that also we can load the delta loads. So based on our requirement, we select that option. Then where we are loading this data, either in the cube or the DSO. Based on the target, we have to select the settings. Either that is additive delta for change records, or additive delta for change records, or new status for change records. Okay. So if you're loading the data to the DSO, then we use the new status for the change records. If you're loading the data to the info cube, then it is the additive delta. So once you save this, once you set up all these things, that is our activities that we perform in the ECC system. Okay, then log on to your BW system. First step is replicate your data source. Replicate your data source. How do you do that? RSA1, modeling. Under modeling, go to the source system, select your source system, double click on that. We have saved our data source in specific module, application module, right? SGMMPP. We have to go to that particular folder, right click and say replicate. We can also do it at the system level. But what will happen here? What all the data sources we have in the ECC system, everything will be replicated. That is a big time consuming process. So we don't want to do that. We want to only replicate the data source which is required. So the best thing is select your lowest folder, means your SD is a folder. Right click on that, say replicate metadata. Okay, once the data is replicated, data source is replicated, initially the data source will be inactive mode. How can you see that? The equal to symbol will be not equal to, and the icon will be in the gray color. Icon will be in the gray color. So go to change mode and activate your data source. Create your info package, load the data. If it is a delta enable, first you have to load the full load, then init delta, and then delta. Then create your data target, create your transformation, and create your DTP and load the data. So these are the steps which are required in your BW system for generic data source. Okay, fine. Next, today's topic is enhancements. Enhancements. Okay. What do you mean by enhancement? Suppose I have a data source. Okay, which is built on VBAK, VBAP. Okay, based on these two data sources. Actually, so this is my data source which is built on these two. That means in the backend there are two tables. Okay, VBAK, and this has assumed that say 200 fields. Out of the 200 fields, for this data source we are getting only 25 fields. Okay, then VBAP. Okay, here also say assume that you have some 200 fields, and from here we are getting only 20 fields. This is what it is. Okay, fine. After some time, we got a new requirement saying that one of the data, this data source from the table VBAK, they want to add two more fields. Two more new fields they want to add. Two more new fields they want to add. So what do? This concept is known as adding a new two fields to the existing data source is called enhancements. Okay, fine. Now I have two scenarios here. Okay, one is adding a field to data source, and then other thing is populating data into the data source for those two fields. Okay, there are two activities here in the enhancement. Adding a field to the data source, first one. Second one is populating the data in the data source. Okay. In this case, this is my scenario one. I have a data source based on the two tables, VBAK and VBAP. These two are already available, right? These two tables are already available. And within these two tables only, we are trying to add two new fields. Okay. So here, how many in this data source? How many fields I have total? 45. I have 45 fields. This data source consists of 45 fields. Okay. Now I am loading the data. Okay. Now I am loading the data. Since when I am loading? Say I am loading from 2020. Okay. So when I started the data loading, initially I have 2 lakhs records. Okay, 2 lakhs records. And daily I am loading deltas. Daily I am loading deltas. So 200, 100, 200 like that it is coming. Now it is 2022. Okay, 2022 May 6th. So how many records I have? Assume that I have total 5 lakhs records. Okay, say assume that here we have data from 2018. Okay, fine. So daily I am loading the data. Total now say I have around 9 lakhs records. 9 lakh records are there. If this concept is clear to you now, till here it is clear. I have a data source. In 2018 I have started data loading. When I load the full load I got 2 lakhs records. From then onwards I am loading delta records. So total records, how many records I have in my info cube? 9 lakh records as of now today. Okay, this is my info cube. This is my info cube. Okay, fine. Now I have got requirement saying that I have to add 2 new fields. So here in the info cube, how many objects I have? 45 info objects. So this also consists of 45 info objects. Okay, 45 info objects. Fine. Now on May 6th, okay, I got a requirement, add 2 new fields. Okay, add 2 new fields. If I add 2 new fields here, plus 2, 45 will be there. What is the data loading we are doing every day? What type of a load we are doing here every day?
Delta.
Delta loads. Okay, fine. So today, from yesterday to today, there are a new 100 records, like 500 records are there. Assume that I have 500 records. So now when I load delta load, for how many records the data will be loaded? For how many fields the data will be loaded?
500, sir.
How many fields?
47 fields, sir.
The data count.
Okay, 47 fields, sir.
45 plus 2.
Yes.
Because
9,
today I have
49.
added 2 fields, right? 45 plus 2. 2 fields I have added newly. So new fields will be added. So when I load here, okay, when I load here on May, sorry, this is we say May 5th, okay. On May 6th, okay, May 6th, I'll be loading 500 records for 47 info objects. 47 info objects. Means I will be not able to see the data for those 2 fields, 2 info objects for 9,000 records. Will I able to see the data? It will be something like this. It will be something like this. Okay. Say 1. Okay, fine. We'll have only these 4. Okay, okay. Say I have a records. This is my serial number. Assume that this is my serial number. Okay. So one record are there like that. It is 9 lakhs records. Okay, and I have the data for here. So some records are there. Okay, some values. This is when May 5th. Okay, May 5th. Say they have 9 lakhs records. 9 lakhs records. Okay, May 5th, I have 9 lakh records. For how many objects here? In this case, I have how many fields I have data? For 3 fields. For 3 fields. Now on May 6th, I have got, and I'm loading delta loads. Okay, I'm loading delta loads. Now on May 6th, I got a new requirement that I have to add 2 new fields. Yes. Insert column right side. Okay. Insert right. Okay, fine. So here I have added new fields here. New field 1, new field 2. Okay. Now I have loading the 2 records. 1 record new, record new 1, record new 2. Okay. When I am loading this data, some records are there. Right? Means the historical data for these 2 fields will not be available. So there is no fields here. Okay. On May 6, when I load the data for the 2 new fields, the data will be like this. Will you agree with me or not? Am I clear? Because we are loading the delta loads, and these 2 new fields, field new 1, field new 2, has been added newly. And we are saying delta loads. We are loading delta load only. We are not loading full load. That means for the new records, what we have loaded, only for those 2 fields from on that day onwards, the data will be loaded. For the historical data, means for these 2 fields, the data before today, it will be blank. Is it okay with the client? There will be different cases. Suppose these 2 new fields, what you have added, they are maintaining from today only. They are maintaining this from today only. Then this is fine. Then this is fine. I can load delta loads. Assume that. For this also, in my tables, I have history. I need also, the client says, I also need the data for here. Old records also I need. Then what we do? We have to load full load. We have to load full load. There is no other way. There is no other way. We have to delete all the data from the cube. We have to delete all the data from the cube. And again, we have to load the full load. Again, we have to load the full load. Okay, so you have to understand the requirement. You have to understand the requirement. Then you have to tell the user, because user doesn't know all these concepts, right? Delta load, full load, what is that? He doesn't know. Okay, we have to explain them. We have to do the analysis. Whenever you get any enhancement case, whenever you do any enhancement case, what we have to talk? Okay, fine. First thing what you have to say is, okay, you have to check whether the what type of a data source is that. Is that delta load or full load? And how many records we have? Total how many records we have? Okay, fine. Now it's a delta load. If it is a full load, you need not to talk anything to the user. Directly delete all the data from the info cube. Every day you will be deleting Full load means always it will be we delete the data and again we load the data, right? So we delete the data and we reload the data. There is no issues with that. If it's a delta load, then we have to talk to the user first. Okay, fine. For the history, do you want to see the data for those two fields? In the report level, for the history, do you want to see the data for those two fields? If the client says yes, then yes, there is no other way. You have to delete the data, again you have to reload the data. If the client says okay, he says, no worries, I may not require the fields for the history data. I need from today only, I want to have to see in my report for those two fields. Then yes, we can directly add the field and we can load the data.